jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Welcome, ladies and gents. We got Mike Colton from Buzzed Movies.
Hey, drink up.
Yo. And then we got Ken Bates,
Hey.
frequenting the Legion podcaster forums.
Yeah, just a Legion fan. There we go. I have an allegiance to Legion.
I pledge allegiance to the Legion. Oh, so we just all kind of just decided if any episode I was going to get him on, let's have him for another round of movie defending. Defending the infamous, defending the overlooked, defending the criminally undervalued. And we could start anywhere, just anything that was just poorly scored on Rotten Tomatoes or had under 40% on Metacritic, or just was just in the IMDb bottom 100 in some way, shape, or form. And so we can choose any movie. It can be so bad it's good. It can be flawed, but hardly, under 50%. It can be mediocre, but not, the worst of the worst, just not offensively bad. And it can be even good, but it's often shat on nowadays, thanks to the internet and Nostalgia Critic and other people just saying, you must hate everything.
Why movie have woman?
Why do film make me think? How dare I be emotionally invested? I prefer mindless techno music. I love that.
I want it to be exactly like the one I grew up with, but not exactly. I don't want it to change too much.
Right. I don't want it to be so blatantly obvious, even though it was always that way, and I'm just now grew up and started understanding what that meant.
Or maybe just don't watch it. That's
Yeah.
always an option too. That seems to be overlooked. I don't know.
Right. How dare I wait for it to come to video so I can just stop it after 5 seconds? Just
Yeah, I mean, Redbox always has a deal. I mean, I get it. I got a movie for 60 cents the other day. It's like, look, if you don't want to spend money at the theater, just wait a few. It'll be cheap.
it really,
Especially now with all the streaming.
Totally.
the streaming. Well, yeah, and that's just it. And everyone's like, everything looks so direct to video. I'm like, it's always been produced pretty cheap. It's just so blatantly obvious now with streaming. Everyone wanting to not
look good.
pay for.
See it on a big screen.
Yeah, you do want to see it on a big screen, and at the same time, it's just like everything is all digital now. So yeah, there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be producers meddling and saving on printed ads. It's like, yeah, and at the same time, why do you give a hoot how much money it made or was made for when you otherwise couldn't tell? Most of the time, sometimes you can, but it's like. Anyone could literally pick up their own video camera and make a pretty cool theatrical looking movie if they really wanted to and had the time and the energy and the study. And it's like, I think we're just getting to the point where it's easy to be a snob when you're surrounded by other snobs, and it's also easy to be disappointed, and I just already kind of like Ricky Morgan here, just don't expect much of anything. I just got to say, if there's some kind of entertainment value, then it's worth watching. And in the past, I've even tried to not even bring up certain movies because I just don't. They're so divisive.
Yeah.
Or if they're not divisive, they vary so much by crowd. Like, I had a bunch of pals who unexpectedly started defending Valerian. And I was like, oh wow, I thought everyone hated that one, but okay. I'm glad I didn't bring it up because it seems like it was it replaced John Carter as the movie which everyone, depending on who you asked, was either, oh yeah, it wasn't that bad, or I fucking hate that movie. You know, it's like, I don't know. I don't want the shouting match, so I don't bring it up.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the how cult followings evolve over time. It's like usually, when we consider cult movies, we think about, 70s, 80s type of exploitation or whatever, but
Yeah.
to see it evolve in modern time with movies like that, it's just interesting to see. It's like, oh, I guess that is a cult movie now. Sure.
I guess that movie was kind of rapey or pretty gratuitous. I guess I did like it more just because it was made in the 80s, but now, oh no, you can't make it now. Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
My growing up was the fourth Indiana Jones picture. That just hurt me so bad that now I just don't get as excited about anything. I can get excited, but I never get that level of excited because that was coming down on Christmas and seeing no presents. If I wasn't with my we were married at the time. If I wasn't with my wife and my good friend, I probably would have walked out of the theater. I was done at a certain point. So
there are those rare kind where it's like, yeah, I want to leave, and at the same time, I can't say that I saw it really if I didn't suffer through it that one time, and then at the other time, it gets even more annoying when other people want to defend it because there's like extra footage on a director's cut, and like it doesn't change the overall hurt that I had and all that.
Nope. I mean, I haven't met anyone try to defend the Crystal Skull, but if you want to, go
it's
for
a pretty funny movie, but I'm not going to defend it.
But it's supposed to be a B movie. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, yes, they were technically B pictures, but it doesn't mean. I think everyone needs to reevaluate what a B movie actually means. It just means it's a genre picture. It can also mean it's a low budget picture, and what it was Indiana Jones was tribute to all those kinds of movies, but that one was just getting too self-indulgent to where it's like, okay, it doesn't really know what it wants to be, and you passed over all these scripts to just let George tell you what to do. Okay, yeah, no.
Objectively badly made as well.
Yeah, I'm not even all that offended by the Gophers. It's just the way it's all just edited together, and you're like, what did that even have to do with anything?
Yeah. Since then, I have learned to temper my expectations.
Yeah, I don't even watch trailers, and I just generally always find them bad, even if it's a movie I'm looking forward to. And so that's where it just gets to where, okay, if you like the talent involved and you really like this movie, and maybe the sequel will pay off or be its own cool movie in its own way. And at the same time, I mean, if you're so to the point where you feel like your opinion must change based on what you've seen other people say, then you kind of have no guts anyway. So it's just like, you shouldn't do all that just random. Oh, I'm gonna go in empty, and then when it comes back, yeah, it wasn't that bad. Or, well, I guess it was forgettable now that two other people pointed out. It's like, just make up your mind, and at the same time, be ready to defend it. So I'm going to defend Land of the Dead and Survival of the Dead. I hardly find them awful. Romero has had some duds before it, and I'll definitely throw Diary of the Dead to the wolves, but this one...
I think I saw it at the dollar store the other day.
Oh dear, that's what it's become.
Yep.
It's like, I find these their own cool post-apocalyptic visions in their own right. Even though Lamb was a studio picture, I didn't feel like his vision was compromised in every way. It just wasn't to everyone's liking, but I was never uninvolved with it, and I found the characters just as over the top as the ones in, Day.
It's got some
Obvi-
good stuff.
You can't top, Dawn, but who can? So it's just like I just really get annoyed when everyone acts like it has to, be better than this or that, or like, oh, a show should be cut off by this amount of seasons. It won't be better than that one. It's like, or maybe it can be its own cool thing. You don't have to one up each time or necessarily be better. You just got to be your own voice and let the subjectivity take place. But that's the other thing is like,
Yeah.
I feel like those are all just apples and oranges. They were different eras, for fuck's sake. Dawn was in the 70s, Day was in the 80s, these were in the 2000s. And it's like, yeah, so you're not going to get the exact same narrative or the exact same voice. It should all be, are you invested in anything? It's like, well, yeah, Romero generally doesn't always invest me because he's not a stupid person. He's not even trying to make an exploitation movie, contrary to what a lot of people thought he was making. It's like, no, he's making just, again, ramifications on how he just feels so scarred by this world, just how we are literally eating each other.
Yeah, he was, even when you read about him, even as a young man, his mind worked on another level. He was political before that was a thing.
Totally. And he knew, much like the activist, he knew how to hide what he thought without being singled out by, people looking for trouble, so
Yep.
he knew how to do that in a movie. And again, like many have talked about before, is like a lot of action and horror movies will just kind of focus on the content and not organize all the messages and themes. And it's like, well, congrats. Now you've just caused an interesting message, and now it's poorly told, and now you're just having more internet punching bag discussions. But no, I don't mind these movies at all. I hardly would say it's seen better days. No, yeah,
Well-
I think he went out with a bang. I think he kept doing what he was doing without letting the studio get his way after a few mishaps in the late 80s. So
I liked
So-
Land. I don't really remember the other ones, to be honest with you. They didn't make much of an impression on me.
well, that's my other problem too, is just how everyone acts like you're gonna know all the characters right away. It's like everyone who knows about Rhodes and all those other guys, they've seen those movies multiple times growing up. So it's just like you're gonna. These are also party movies, so you're gonna have to watch them at least 3 times to get all the themes, all the essence, just like any blockbuster movie. And if you don't like zombies, that's why when I was on another podcast and I gave like one of them an 8 out of 10, they're like, why? Oh, if it's perfect, why'd you rate it less than that? I'm like, because if you don't like zombie movies, it won't win you over.
Yeah.
So 2 points off for that. It's just like they're good zombie movies with good messages and well done, but at the same time, if you don't like them, you won't. So, yeah, genre pictures. So I'm gonna let you go ahead, Mike. And what's a movie that you've always had to defend and you've never understood the hate, and it just seems like it's aggravated or people just want to get on a bandwagon?
Well, me, I'm more of a action guy. I mean, I
Like
write for
Blair.
Ultimate Action Movie Club.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my focus. So the one I'm always defending, even to my own family, is Battle Los Angeles 2011, starring Aaron Eckhart. Everyone craps on this movie, and I get why. Like, I'm not totally like a fanboy or whatever of this, but I don't know what it is. It's like, yeah, okay, we're recycling some of the themes from like an Independence Day or even a Black Hawk Down, but I mean, it's kind of its own thing, to me anyway. I'm a veteran.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
and I saw a bootleg of it online, and I wasn't wowed by it, but I grew up on it afterwards, and it just seemed like, I don't know. It's like all the movies they're comparing it to is like, did you realize those movies were hated at the time too? Like I saw people comparing it to all the other
Well, the
Predator
war movies.
and Starship Troopers. I'm like,
Yeah.
those weren't liked at the time, but people liked them. So
They develop an audience over time, and it seems like war movies in the modern era either have to be focused on some individual drama or Some other themes that are kind of tangential to the actual war fighting that's going on.
I guess.
You, you know what I mean? Like okay,
I do. I know what you mean, but it
Mhm.
is just concerning how people feel like it must have a certain say or be a certain way, and then if it feels too similar, it's like, oh, I don't like that. It's like, so what did you want? You can't have it both ways. Do you want the person to speak in their own voice, or do you want them to just imitate other movies? You know, better.
right.
What do you?
Well, it's like, yeah, a lot of these stories have been around forever. So I don't know why they're piling on this particular movie for not delivering anything quote unquote new. So I mean, that's kind of where I stand. It's like, yeah,
It
no,
never
I know.
was gonna do anything new. It was just gonna do a good job as a genre picture, which is, Marines fighting giant
Right.
extraterrestrials. So
And I
yeah,
think that what makes it unique though is that it's told from the platoon's point of view, whereas like, movies like, Independence Day and some of these other alien invasion, it's like, yeah, you're looking at like a global view of what's going on. So what's this one doing over here? What's this one doing in the next country over? No, it's like we're focused in on the street level. Like, what are a bunch of grunts going to do in an alien invasion? And that perspective, I think, was like blew me away. Um, it looked like the Battle of Fallujah back in the mid 2000s with those Marines out there in Iraq doing their thing. And I support those guys downrange in a previous life. So it kind of like spoke to me in that way. Maybe I'm a little biased in that, but that
that's a
kind
good
of drew
point.
me in. That concept drew
But
me in.
but to your point, you would also be able to sniff out any bullshit too.
Right. And
Yeah. Wrong
right. I mean,
addressing, wrong uniform.
Or
yeah,
just, that's not what it's like kind of thing.
yeah, and they actually did a pretty good job. I know the cast went through like a couple weeks of a boot camp with some Marines out in Camp Pendleton and stuff. So it looked, for the most part, looked legit. They were actually trying, unlike some of these things that you see nowadays. But I mean, it looked pretty good as far as this is how it would look, if an alien force invaded and we don't know what the hell to do.
Well,
Um,
and like you say, it keeps its tone in line because Independence Day, it's both well made and not well made. It's one of those kinds of movies. It's a
Yeah.
disaster film that's kind of become. It depends on the audience. Some people find it so bad it's good. Some people find it campy. Other people just legit love it. So it's just like when they do all these comparisons, it's like you do realize you're also comparing movies that have a similar premise but don't necessarily have the same tone or
no,
mood.
yeah,
So it's
totally.
like this movie is just a gritty looking like it's, I guess you could say, yeah, definitely trying to have a Black Hawk Down, I Am Legend kind of crowds, but at the same time just kind of just yeah, it's just trying to look like what an actual future war looks like when you got an unseen extraterrestrial.
Yeah, it's Fallujah with aliens, right? And the aliens themselves look kind of interesting compared to others. They're like fully, mech'd out, kind of a hybrid of mechanical parts and living organisms. So I think they did put a lot of care into producing a kind of a unique alien force that was actually using a lot of more conventional weapons. Usually we're used to seeing space lasers and giant blue beams coming from the sky, right? But
Mm-hmm.
this movie kind of took it a different way. Say, okay, they're using conventional weapons. The things that they're using look like bullets and things of that nature. They're not doing anything too crazy. So they were kind of an even match for the Marines on the ground. So I thought that was an interesting angle as well that maybe people don't pick up on or whatever. So
I got a
I don't
bit of
know.
that, but yeah, I think it just came out. I remember seeing so much shit talking back in the day on the internet where it seemed like anything that was PG-13 versus R was automatically bad. I'm like, I don't give two fucks what it's rated. If you like the movie, you like it. It doesn't. If it takes 2 seconds more of gore for the movie to be good, what will make it good? It's just like you can't
Well,
think that way.
and that's the
And
thing. It's like if you're in a real war situation, I mean, yeah, you're dealing with injuries and things on the ground, but as far as battling the enemy, they're usually far away from you, and when you pop somebody, it's a little poof of dust, and that's it. So
I
it's not
know.
a gory affair unless you're dealing with your buddies being shot at. But I mean, it's like I said, it takes more pains, I think, to be realistic, and maybe that's why I didn't have the exploding body parts that they wanted. I don't know. I don't know what
That,
audience.
or every movie has to have like a giant star, and then I'll see some of those same people who hate some of the overrated actors being in everything. Oh, why can't they use unknowns? I'm like, we've been doing movies with unknowns. You guys haven't been seeing them. It's just like,
Yeah,
and
right.
these guys are semi-known. They've been around forever. Ackard, Michelle Rodriguez, and Michael Pena, Bridget Moynihan, I think, was in there. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, all these guys have been awesome, and it, again, it's just nonstop contrarianism, and I just really wish people would just flesh it out a little more. What will make you happy?
Yeah, totally. And kind of a similar vein, kind of a similar feel and style was like Terminator Salvation. Everyone takes a giant dump on that movie for some reason. It kind of reminds me a lot of Battle of Los Angeles. I don't know what you guys' opinions on that movie is.
I've had to both agree and disagree with several points on Salvation, and it's like, okay, so obviously it's not the first two movies. As a future war movie, I guess you could say it's half successful. You know, it's decent, it's fun. I saw it in the theater, but at the same time, I can see why, Part 3, and Genesis and all that stuff just is like, that was a franchise that kind of was tied with Hellraiser and even the Die Hards for just keep continually changing a mode to where
Yeah.
no one could agree or be consistent on what sequel they did or didn't love. And so then I just would have to keep changing the subject and say, hey, let's go and rewatch the first movie. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. Salvation is like, okay, so yeah, I was trying to be like Battlestar Galactica and kind of also appeal to the Transformers crowd. So it's just like, okay, well, it's still pretty interesting considering all the behind the scenes melodrama that was happening.
It was all worth it for those clips.
Oh, yeah.
You want me to fucking trash your lights? You want to fucking trash them?
Right.
Again, I know I saw it, but it didn't leave that much of an. I don't remember anything about it really.
Not even Moon and Blood good?
No, sadly, no. I remember more of the third one than Salvation.
I will admit the R-rated Blu-ray is kind of interesting to watch because what small changes you see, how it gets even kind of grittier slightly.
I'd be willing to
I guess,
rewatch that one though.
but yeah, no, that's a good point, Mike. Is like it seemed like at that point everything just had to be darkly lit and have kind of a gritty handheld look and just showing the future, and all the ones that you didn't expect to land with audiences did, like The Road and Children of Men, and then other ones that were often, seen by audiences flopped, and is like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think it was just a different mood back then. Yeah, like you mentioned, The Road. It's like I was depressed as hell after watching that. It's like I don't want to ever see this again. I mean, versus
Yeah.
like these other, Terminator Salvation or Battle of Los Angeles. Like, yeah, I can watch them again. The good guys win. I don't know. I don't feel terrible about myself or humanity after watching them. Now, there's a time and place for that, sure.
Yeah.
But as far as rewatchability, I go for more that type of thing.
Well, and somehow along the way, someone must have just thought, oh, well, if you want something fast, you just want junk food. I'm like, no, I just want movies that really are a little better organized. That's really all I want. And I think many people do want that, but like you say, it's like you, everyone just also seems to want to buy into what every critic is saying. Is like, you do realize studios can bid for awards and all that. No, it's made up. It's not made up. Why are all these insiders saying this otherwise, and in credible books? So it's just like, I think everyone's just spoiled on what their neighbor's thinking versus what they're thinking, or I really don't know. I could speculate all day, but I guess everyone was also channeling what they were feeling about society and everything at that point. They were depressed and not liking the 6 o'clock news. So it's like, yeah, they were just doing it in sci-fi horror action form, and it's like, that's what you got to do. In Battlestar Galactica, there's a lot of allusions to the invasion of Iraq at that point, and it's like, it flew over everyone's head. I'm like, I got that. I was only 14 when that fucking thing was on.
Sure.
It was a pretty good show, and it was depressing, but it also wrapped it up and was exciting. So it was just like it channeled the right kind of emotions to make everyone tune in for 4 years. So it's like,
Sure, and I think like like you mentioned there and before, it's like you gotta appreciate movies in the time that they were made. Especially when we look back, like you were talking about Romero's work, is like consider the decade that he made that and what themes he was going for. Not everything has a universal connection, although certain elements do. But I mean, if you think about history and what was going on, it makes you appreciate movies that much more.
oh,
at least
totally.
for-
And when defending those movies, I saw all his fans acting like his earlier movies had been well received. I'm like, no, they weren't. They were video nasties. They were, shit upon as just
Or
mindless.
Knight Riders. Consider Knight Riders.
Yeah, that's the first movie. There's a movie I could defend. Yeah, my folks, that was the first movie they saw Ed Harrison. They're like, oh, that was a pretty dumb movie, but that actor, man, what a great actor. He's gonna do things, and sure enough, he did. But
Yeah.
it was like, yeah, some stuff you also just gotta be in a mood for. And it's like, okay, when you're videotaping it off the VCR, you don't really know what to expect other than what the ads.
Me, I was a real little kid, and I heard Knight Rider. I expected to see Michael and Kit, and my mother was like, "No, honey, it's not that Knight Rider." So I didn't see it till much later.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, well, Ken, I'll let you go with another.
Well,
pick.
Michael, I'm Mike. Sorry, I'm glad when you said action. I said, "Oh crap, he's gonna pick what I'm gonna pick."
Oh yeah.
But you didn't, and I'm so happy because I want to know what you guys think.
Yep.
Last Action Hero has always been a movie that I enjoyed. I saw it in the theater with my best bud, and we appreciated the breaking the fourth wall, the self-reflexity of it, poking fun at the conventions of the action movie. We were bought in. And then when it tanked and nobody else liked it, we were shocked.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I think it's become a lot more appreciated by a lot of other people who just, during the 90s, they rented everything. And that was just one they saw a lot of. And I know a lot of Arnold fans like it. Some of his fans still hate it. But
Magic
like you say, another cameo by Danny DeVito in a movie. Yeah, it's another movie that I think I would have liked it better if it had been R, but at the same time, I mean, it does a pretty banged up job of, like you say, making fun of the overdone, movie hero package, and it was years before other stuff like Black Dynamite, and
Yeah,
we actually talked to. Yeah, we also talked about how Low Down Dirty Shame had a pretty abysmal score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's like I can't think of anyone who doesn't find that movie funny. It's
yeah.
That's the same kind of deal, just making fun of the genre pictures but not excluding people, and everyone kind of like some of those other well-known parodies is like remembers the various movie trailers. I think it has as big a following almost as UHF, arguably. It's just that kind of parody film is like, and I think, I don't know, I guess most people who have seen parodies just seem to think, it's got to be by the Zuckers or whatever, or Scary Movie, and it's like, no, it can just be whatever kind of parody it's claiming to be and just not outstay its welcome and make you laugh most of the time. And I guess that was it. I don't know. Everyone acts like Arnold just went downhill during the 90s. I'm like, how? These movies were never great with critics. It's like somewhere along the way, I see a lot of people acting like it was sacrilege like certain comedy or horror. I'm like, I don't know what planet you guys are on. I always recall at least one horror or comedy movie being well received at every festival or award show. I can't think of any action movie that is like, it was sacrilege to like, unless it's Jerry Bruckheimer. You can't like it. And I'm like, well, I like a lot of stuff, and none of it had anything to do with Jerry Bruckheimer. A lot of it had to do with Joel Silver, because Joel Silver has just, I've even confirmed it with other people who have met him. Including the director of Ballistic, X vs. Sever, who I defended last time. He's just like, yeah, Joel legit loves movies. So when he's pitching a movie, he has to be invested in it on some level or think that an audience will really dig it before he puts his name on it. And I think that's a good point. I think there are a lot of producers, is like, as we've seen with the development of Sonic the Hedgehog, there's just so many people. They're worried too much about the money. They're not They don't have any idea what kind of an audience they're making it for, and because they're ignoring certain advice, then they're just getting to that next point where it's like, no. Where did you hear that? Fake news.
Yeah, at least in the 80s, they could blame it on cocaine. I don't know what they're doing now.
Yeah. Opioids or too much political correctness. I'm like, no, that's not it at all either. I guess, why does everyone even need a fall guy? Can it just be, it just didn't land, and you don't know why, and better luck next time.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to have a reason, but
I'm just bad timing.
Someone's got to get fired. Somebody's got to be reassigned. So I'm going to defend another movie from 2010. IFC films kind of were on fire for a while. Then kind of in the 2000s, 2010s, they kind of got ridiculed for just picking just about anything to put in their name on. One of their movies was The Tortured, which was released in 2010. This could have, I guess, been a little more intense, but it was just a fun revenge movie. I thought it got to the point, and it showed how people who go out and become vigilantes eventually become contrarians, eventually become hypocrites when you just start that blinded by violence. But I didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome, and I thought it went on pretty fast. It kind of reminded me of other movies that had that kind of claustrophobicness, like Panic Room or Buried, but it wasn't. It was kind of a nice mixture of all that while kind of marketing it towards the Taken crowd. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have not seen this, but I'm looking at it on IMDb right now, and I'll check that out.
Yeah, it went by pretty fast. That's all I can ask for is like a movie to not overstay its welcome. And I see that a lot too, where everyone's like, oh, but it's got to do this and that. I'm like, if it did this and that, then you would claim it outstayed its welcome. It didn't get all grimy, but it also kind of had something, I guess, for the Saw crowd without being a Saw movie, if that made sense. Is like, okay, good, because I'm not a fan of Saw. I think for the longest time, that's what kind of ruined horror movies for me. And I know a lot of people get off on that. And I'm like, it's not my thing, guys. Sorry. What do you guys think of Wishmaster?
I didn't really like it. I saw it in the theater when it came out. I didn't hate it, but I just kind of was like, oh, that just was there.
No, good. I kind of succumbed to it years later just because it was often on channels like Sci-Fi Channel. And
Yeah.
it was one of those, it kind of got me into horror. It's like, okay, so horror can be kind
That's
of like,
cool.
it can be funny, it can be wacky, it can be over the top, it can be kind of action packed. You know, you got this unstoppable Terminator warlock kind of guy going around making mischief. So it's kind of something for everybody. But like you say, it doesn't really change the genre. It was just kind of just cool just seeing a low budget, rather mainstream movie just kind of just be naughty.
When it came out, I was working at a theater, and we were showing it on 2 screens, and we always heard the rumor that somebody lost their job over that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but I heard
What's the
higher
gin
up
in the back?
muckety-muck.
As you wish.
Yeah, 'cause we played it on 2 screens, and I could tell you it did not pack them in there.
Yeah, it made its money back, but it
Yeah.
was kind of
Yeah.
a limited release like a lot of those movies.
I worked at a 16-screen multiplex, so.
Damn. Miss those days. So, Mike, I'll let you round up another one.
Sorry, what was that?
I'll let you round up another one.
Oh, yes. No, Last Action Hero was a good one, Ken.
Thank you.
I don't really get the hate for that. I mean, I understand, like, oh, well, we want to see a, big, dumb Arnold movie, but it had some cinema paradiso going on and
Yeah.
just love of the art going
Definitely a
on
little
in
Joe
there.
Dante in there. Yeah. It's
Definitely.
Yeah. So I don't get that. Yeah, it's like I looked at it recently. And it's like, was it really that bad at the time? I guess it was. Man, that shocked me. But the one that everyone always makes fun of me for, and it always has a crappy review, is Regarding Henry. Did anyone ever see that?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, well,
I've always had at least one person like it. That's my mother's favorite movie, and I couldn't stand
Nice.
it. But I
maybe
understand. I
maybe that's why they
understand
make
it.
fun of me because like moms and people like that movie. I don't know. It's like I would see it, yeah, like we were talking about, like USA or something. Like it would just be on, right? Just
It really
randomly on
would.
various
Nonstop.
parts of the day. But you just get intrigued, but it's like a kind of like a soap opera, type of thing. But it's like,
That's
oh,
Mike
that's
Nichols
really
for you. Yeah.
yeah.
And
So I don't get the. I mean, yeah, okay, I get it a little bit. Okay, it's schmaltzy, kind of maybe corny at times, but it's
I think
like,
it's a little awkward, but you got to be in that mood. But I know what you mean. It is kind of a lot of the time when people complain, "Oh, this didn't make me happy." A lot of people are just they kind of revolt against awkward situations, and it like has to either be. It's kind of the same thing with comedy. Is like, do you want it to be well paced, or do you want it to be just too much and excessive and gross out? It's like, what do you want? And I think at that time, everyone had seen Ford be, atypical of what anyone expected, and I guess it definitely had its critics who liked it and all that. I think it's an acquired taste, I guess. Just, if you're gonna get into it, is like, okay, this is kind of a coming of age kind of rehab kind of movie, kind of like 28 Days.
there's a good double bill for you.
Except we
No,
put
I
it
just
on
want to
28
see
days
this.
later by accident.
Yeah,
Oh.
I just want to see this New York asshole reform himself and be a decent dad and husband. Damn it, that is wholesome.
Fathers are a sorry lot. Good pick. Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's not an easy to describe kind of movie. You just kind of, but eventually you're gonna get to it if you are a fan of any of the cast and have heard Seth MacFarlane make fun of it. It's just like, yeah, it's. I think a lot of the times everyone also acts like, I don't know. It's like every rating's gonna be consistent. It's like plenty of time there's good reviews for stuff, but they're not even collected on half of these review sites, and there's plenty of other ones which I guess you can say you don't even necessarily have to like while you're watching it. You can think about that and like, oh yeah, I do remember that scene. You kind of think about that, and that's kind of a different kind of movie. I'm not necessarily a J.J. Abrams guy, but that's definitely probably one of his better movies. This is, so yeah, Fugitive Ken.
This is a love it or hate it movie, and I happen to be in the camp that loves it. Is the Blair Witch Project?
Yeah,
Not part
seems
two.
like
I'm just kidding.
seems like people have dumped on that only in the last, like, what, 10 to 15 years. People are like just taking a crap. I don't know. At the time, it seemed like it blew a lot of people away, like, for its inventiveness. But now it's like, I don't know what happened.
It's been
really,
done to death in the meantime, I think.
the
Yeah,
only found footage I really liked has been Record, but at the same time, I have generally just not really liked that genre. But I should give it another watch to see, because the making of it is definitely fascinating. It's like,
Yeah.
Guys rented equipment, returned it. And it
And
was definitely it's influenced by other people who kind of reference it without even realizing they're referencing it. That's kind of what I notice with a lot of movies nowadays. Is like any movie, good or bad, you're referencing it at some point.
And it's maybe one of the reasons I really appreciate it is I read the Fangoria article at the time about them making it. Those
Nice.
folks didn't they just received a basket in the morning saying go to this coordinate, and they each had their own envelopes telling them what to do. So like when they had no idea that, I forget what the character's name was. They had no idea he was going to be gone. Josh. They had no idea Josh was going to be gone. He just was told to sneak out when they were all asleep.
Nice.
So
method acting.
yeah. So that's a lot of what you see on that is real. That is real. They are really scared. They did not know that they were, people would be messing. Well, I'm sure they suspected it, but they didn't know that, they'd be going after the tent or anything like that while they were asleep. And seeing that movie in a theater, whenever it went to turn to night, you could have heard a mouse fart in that theater. Everybody was silent, just waiting.
And that's the thing. You don't need gore and blood and guts everywhere. It's like just the suggestion. And that's what I remember from it too. It's just like just being creeped out by, because like, yeah, a lot of us have been camping before, and any sort of sound like perks you up instantly, but having it in that context really sold it. I don't know.
I think that's a good point. I think at that point, I mean, people were even just not expecting, atypical kind of, it seemed to be like every premise has to be so drawn out. It's like, no, sometimes you can just go into a movie and you just don't know what you're seeing. And it's because it's visually different than a typical kind of thing. That's also what kind of grabs your attention because it was planned that way. That's how the story was told. That's how it had its own identity. And I've seen some people who have picked up on that over the years, but there's others who just, you still have to remind them. It's like, okay, this isn't your typical kind of movie. So I think you got to reaffirm your critique. It's like, and now, when movies like that came out, everyone had to instantly say what are the best and worst, found footage movies. It's like, well, it's a subgenre. It's going to be around for a while. So you might as well just say, just make it be part of the genre in some fashion. But
yeah, no, it deserves respect just for that, just for being the, one of the first of its kind. So I don't know.
Definitely
I
the
don't get
biggest
the hate.
hit.
Well, and especially when it was closing up, when, VHS tapes were stopping almost, you had people figuring out, how to pick brains at the indie film market. And, it's like when everyone says you need a name to, publish a movie. No, you don't.
Wild West was the same summer. Lost a ton of money.
Right.
Deservedly so. Yeah.
Everyone always forgets, that it pretty much, I always just would even say to just some friends and family, is like pretty much the difference between any movie is just actors and money. Everyone always seems to forget the part about the script. Well, we cut this out. It'll still make sense. No, it doesn't make sense because I don't even know why that movie exists. It's got nothing to do with the TV show it's based on. Great comedy for the wrong reason. Oh my God, the pain of that movie. Just any others that you guys want to just drag up that you see scored oftentimes, like often make a lot of bad lists, like in general, like they're always like worst of the year, and you're like, there were worse movies out that year. It was mediocre, but it was hardly, 20%.
It's a movie I don't love, but there's this conception that Waterworld is the biggest disaster in the history of movies, and it really wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Despite repeated times of people saying, hey, there's an extended TV cut that's better, and it's finally gotten the Blu-ray treatment. I saw it, and I kind of felt afraid to even say that I had not minded it. And it's like, but again, everyone seems to just, remember just the negative headlines. It lost money. It's over
piling on. Yeah.
So it just showed you how people could tamper with the press, leak secrets, and could kill a movie before it had any chance of coming out. Or if a studio disagreed with the creatives behind it, they could sabotage it. So it's like,
it's a theme. Last Action Hero, people were waiting for Arnold to fail. Waterworld, people were waiting for Kevin Costner to fail, and there's nothing people love more than people who have never made a movie to make fun of someone else's movie.
Totally. Some of these, that's kind of why Disney is getting with the streaming platform. A lot of its movies weren't doing so hot that weren't related to their big franchises, and it's like, okay, so do you not like these movies personally, and you want just the slowest return for an already under budget movie, or what? What do you want?
Yeah, or that theme too of just well, it's Mad Max on the water. It's like, okay, it's not every future dystopian movie has to be referenced to Mad Max all the time. Like, I don't.
If anything, it was showing how David Twohy could do kind of atypical kind of genre mashups together. I mean, you see a lot of the Riddick character in that, guild human character
Mhm.
that he illustrates, and it's like, yeah, and he did some other kind of movies that were at sea, like, Perfect Getaway, which is on an island, and Below, which was a haunted submarine movie, and it's like, but I don't think anyone regrets their contributions they made to that movie. It was just kind of, I guess, maybe the music is a little cheesy in the last hour, but that was just kind of, it's more of a datedness thing. It's more, that's what every other music score was sounding like at that time. And I do recall parts of that soundtrack, kind of like Dragonheart. There were big Universal attractions. Their scores were constantly used in movie trailer themes, and people would be like, "What's the theme for that movie?" Oh, but it's not on. It's not even part of the movie. It's just an awesome score. I think a lot of good actually did come out of it. And you'll see a lot of sci-fi fans who never minded it. It was their kind of view of what they wanted to see, a post-apocalyptic movie at sea. But like you say, it just was. I've never even been a huge Mad Max guy, and I was like, I'll watch them, but I don't get from what other people get. And
My buddy and I drove to the theater. We had a large soda. We had a large popcorn. We had a good time for about an hour and a half or whatever.
There you go.
I mean, what else do you want? I mean, that's what it was.
Definitely better than The Postman.
Yeah, and you know what? We kind of like that one too.
Okay, maybe I should
I
rewatch
didn't hate it. My buddy liked it more than I did, but I was like, yeah, you know what? That's it was definitely too long. And I don't know that he landed all the ideas, but I don't think it was one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Yeah. And even the movies that are often mocked as like the worst. Yeah. Again, I think it was just kind of just constantly mocked along with Heaven's Gate, just because a certain group of people didn't like it and it was over budget. A lot of people just instantly wanted to shit on it, and it's like, okay, well,
you didn't learn your lesson last time, Kevin Costner.
I mean, all these movies are going to be under budget anyway. I don't even really trust many of the numbers, because half the time you'll be like, where did that movie come from?
Yep.
They still spend a bunch of undisclosed money out of their own pockets on marketing, and if they can save themselves a even greater tax cut, they'll do it. Under report.
Yeah.
I don't know where that money went. That wasn't part of the budget, was it? I don't think it was. So, I mean, regardless of whether they get it right all the time, or, I mean, people also act like because two popular filmmakers and actors aren't getting along with each other, that instantly means the movie's bad. I'm like, or maybe it can just be one hiccup one day, and someone who shouldn't have been on set that day, leaked it to the press.
Yeah, just look at every Christian Bale film, all entertaining. The guy's an asshole, so it all works out.
Didn't Klaus Kinski and Werner Herzog want to kill each other? So they made some great art.
Right. Yeah. There's a reason he gets along with other Hollywood bad boy Russell Crowe. That's another thing too. I know some of these westerns get shit upon. Like, I saw some people hating on Magnificent Seven. I'm like,
what?
Oh, it's a remake.
Really?
Like,
oh, okay.
And
all
I'm
right.
like, like Magnificent Seven wasn't already remade as a TV show and had endless sequels. Like, it's not already a remake of Seven Samurai. I made that legit argument, and no one bit. They're just like, oh, it's perfection, John Sturges. I'm like, what else can you name by John Sturges? Great Escape. What else can you name besides that one? I don't know. Okay, fuck you. You're letting your nostalgia talk. You're not actually forming an argument. And it doesn't have to be an argument. I don't have to say that's better or worse than this. I personally will always go to the Seven Samurai, but in all fairness, the reason they kind of picked it is because Fuqua is very inspired by Kurosawa, so I'd hardly say he was the bad, passable workman-like guy to get it done. He was totally the right kind of guy to get that done.
And it's funny because Kurosawa was influenced by a lot of previous American media as well, so it's like it all comes around. So I don't get it.
It really does.
And so that's kind of like the running theme here. It's like it just seems like these movies tank mostly because of these preconceived notions or prejudices for whatever reason, whether it be the genre or the source material, but they just want to kind of hate it, and they kind of go in there and getting what they want. I don't know.
Right, and then if they're actually liking it, you see some of them just cringing, like in the theaters. Oh, damn it, I'm liking this movie. I'm like, why would you watch a movie just going in just wanting to hate it? I mean,
Yeah. Like
I don't want to go and hate a movie. I like to be surprised. I like to not know what even to expect or have the trailer flat out lie to me. I'm fine with it lying to me. I get that it's not produced in studio anymore.
And I'm not saying that I like
the Green Knight.
But when the Ghostbusters the remake came out, somebody I don't know whether it was on Twitter or Facebook, someone said, the new Ghostbusters out today. I heard I hate it.
Wow.
So that just people like to just pile on.
Yeah, I mean,
and again, not to defend that movie. I'm just saying
and that's
culture.
just it. I don't think it's even significant enough to bash anyone who likes it. I mean, it was a movie that was knowingly a remake, and you see so many people acting like it, letting their sexist side out. It was bad because it was all female cast. I'm like, okay, yeah, there's some movies with gimmicks that don't work. It's hardly because the gimmick didn't work. It's just because it wasn't particularly everyone's brand of comedy. I mean, I wasn't even too hot on the first sequel. I'm like, but everyone just seems to act like, it's like, oh, but because Jason is related to Ivan, it'll be good. I'm like, maybe not. I mean, I like Jason Reitman, but he's had some duds. So it's like,
nepotism always produces the best results, in my experience. So yeah. Just saying.
I mean, it might be good, and at the same time, I mean, you're always going to just see someone just endlessly comparing it to the 2016 one. I'm like, okay, well, you really shouldn't villainize fans for liking all this other stuff. You're starting an argument before there is one, and
like what you like, don't be a dick.
Exactly.
I'm just looking at a quick list right here of allegedly the worst box office bombs of all time. I rather enjoyed the Wachowskis' Speed Racer.
We defended that last time. I defended Cloud Atlas. I even said Jupiter Ascending was probably nonsensical, but it was visually stunning. So it's just like, okay, I'll take that. I
gotta see Cloud Atlas because I just finished their Netflix series Sense8, and I really enjoyed that.
I think you'll like that way more because it seemed like Jupiter Ascending, I guess, had some stuff cut, and it's like, yeah, Cloud Atlas. If you're just into just all the forms of just multiple mirror universes, kind of, and a little bit of it does always give you that sense of reincarnation, kind of, without being preachy or religious. Is like, what was I in another life, in another universe, and all these actors, acting atypical of what they usually do, and an epic storyline towards the third portion. So many people I know just acted like they didn't know what they were getting. I'm like, okay, well, I got this all in one scoop versus having to watch a Christopher Nolan movie multiple times. And he's had some movies that some people didn't like, and everyone acted like, oh, sacrilege. And it's like, well, it's not going to hit every time. It was a little loud, that one, or that one did kind of make my head hurt to where I had to watch it 5 more times. It's like, you can't please everybody, and I really don't understand why everyone acted like they were one-hit wonders, after Matrix. I'm like, I really much enjoyed V for Vendetta, and Speed Racer, they're totally the right people to do that. Because
those people didn't see Bound.
Yeah, let alone Assassins.
Yeah, good stuff.
Which actually got defended last episode. It was like,
nice.
Yeah, what did you expect? It was a Tarantino-esque kind of noir kind of movie, and it was like, yeah, it's kind of what the 90s were. There were a bunch of genre mashups and formulas. And that's actually probably one of the few Stallone movies where you didn't hear any strange stories behind the scenes. So,
now that we're on Stallone, you reminded me of a movie my sister and I really love that anyone who tells you they didn't like this movie didn't see it. Oscar.
I really much enjoy that, but I see so many
movie.
people that kind of joins Last Action Hero, where a lot of them, I mean, I've seen people defend Last Action Hero and Hudson Hawk, but it's like, anytime anyone brings up Oscar, I see a lot of people shit on that one, and it's like, well, it's a parody.
It's a play. It's a screwball comedy.
It really is. And I mean, is the poster of him dangling off a tower clock not enough to point that out to you? I mean, shit.
They just don't. They can't accept Sly and anything else.
Right,
Yeah.
and then they hate him when he does exactly more of what he's been doing the last 20 years. And so, I mean, you don't have to like all the Rocky or Rambos, but don't act
No.
like he doesn't have some other just atypical performances in his inventory. I mean,
Yeah.
well, shit. I guess I'll get it out of the way. I'm not an ardent fan. If you don't like it, fine. That's fine. I've probably seen Judge Dredd every Saturday on TNT, but I didn't think it was great. I just thought, okay, so it's junk food. It's not all like the comic. It's a poor man's Robocop. But it's a Stallone movie. It's some fun. It's a problematic sci-fi. Do I like it as much as these other often bashed upon sci-fi movies? Definitely not. But it's junk food. It's fun.
Well, it's
It's
funny. I
quotable.
mean, Judge Dredd shares a lot of DNA with Starship Troopers as far as like messages that people don't really understand.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
they were parodying that type of government and that system. They weren't like
which is what
advocates for it.
the Dread comic book was, which also says a lot to Stallone, who would often mix in some other confusing messages. And it's like, yeah, but that's what you got in
Yeah,
RoboCop too. And yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean, even Total Recall. It's like
Yeah.
you guys do realize all these movies are about kind of having that cyberpunk theme of bad corporations, out of control robots, out of you know pretty whack police force, dystopian future. It's like, yeah.
yeah. Well, I just want to hear him say "I am the law" one more time, so I'm good.
Just wait for Expendables 4.
Yeah.
Oh man. I did defend Johnny Mnemonic last episode because the Japanese cut of it is so much better than the very hackneyed
Oh,
version that most people know it from, and it now ranks up there for me just with Blade Runner because that's just
Nice.
it. It's so re-edited, it's so rescored. You actually know what the villains are trying to kill him that you just don't get in the regular, problematic, version that just felt like a unfinished Star Trek episode. And it's like, yeah, no, it's it. There was a good movie in there. It's just the version we saw was just very cut down and. In all
no,
fairness, I doubt he
I,
would have even been in the Matrix had he not been in that one. So
yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's totally true, and I love that movie. I mean, it's just again, like you mentioned before, kind of that '90s mashup era
Oh yeah.
that
See Henry
just went
Rollins and
totally
Ice-T.
bonkers. Yeah,
Henry Rollins, yeah, who even performs on the soundtrack. But yeah, it, there's so many other extended scenes that totally paint a totally different portrait. And again, I think it's just another one, much like Waterworld. '95 is a big year. This is like everyone is the damage is done. No one will revisit it. They hate it so much, and like it's really not that bad compared to what you
Yeah.
think it is. Um, and yeah, I've known people who've only seen the cut down version who liked it very much just because that's just how they were built. They totally reacted to these kinds of movies that all of us have been talking about. They like genre pictures and they make no quibbles about it. And it's like, it seems like if it didn't make the top movies of the year, you must be ashamed to hate it. And it's like, well, good luck. There's plenty of movies that are flops, and there's plenty of movies that it's okay for them to be 50-50 with the crowd. There's going to
well,
be some movies.
I don't know how
Sorry, go ahead.
anyone's hating on a movie with Dolph Lundgren and Ice-T in it. I mean, come on.
Oh.
Right, Dina Mayer, and then
Yeah.
beat Takano, Takushi. And it explains their stories way better. It's even better scored, and there's a few extended scenes that just kind of give you an idea of how crooked that whole city is. Something that you kind of don't get in the main theatrical cut. And it's like, but at least this was a movie that had some kind of vision as opposed to just being mindless or feeling like direct-to-video crapola. And it's like, yeah, no, it was pretty intriguing. And there's a lot of low-budget independent pictures that went to TV or video that we're going to like at least 2 of those 10 that are at the video store that we've never heard of. But that's the other thing, too. I noticed direct-to-video did kind of get villainized for a while. And it's like, well, the ones that made a living out of it, like Full Moon and PM, I mean, those guys, that's kind of was part of the fun. You didn't know if you're going to get a fun movie that was almost as good as what you see at a Cineplex, or if it was just bottom of the barrel. Oh, I'm so embarrassed I rented that, So that was kind of the fun before it just got oversaturated with, oh my God, where did this come from? Oh, there's a reason I haven't heard of it, So I think everyone just has all these preconceived notions, and they never kind of let loose, and they just seem to think that trends can't evolve after a while. It's like, no, it totally can. I mean, if anything, the 90s were embracing all technology. It's like, you're going to see one of these movies one way or another, whether it's on pay-per-view 5 months later or on a videotape or at the dollar theater. It doesn't have to be the expensive drive-in you've been going to the last 20 years.
Might catch it on TNT and say, hey, that wasn't
Yes.
that bad.
We no trouble. That's the other thing too. Is it a good movie or is it a TNT classic? Is it a USA Network classic? Oh God. I guess we can do a few more, and then I guess we can wrap it up, and you guys can promote what you're doing. So, well, hell, is there any bad movies that kind of like inspired a show or spinoff or anything? Like, what's your take on a few other franchises that are often mocked, but you kind of like some of the installments?
Oh, I'll never say the Friday the 13th movies are art, but I'll hang
Yeah.
out and watch part 7 right now. I know it's a piece of garbage and it's exploitive and awful, but I don't know, for whatever reason, just
Can't
just
stop
like it.
watching it. Yeah.
Well, a different vein. I don't know why, but I always go back to Police Academy 5 for some
Oh
reason.
yeah.
Remember the one where they go to the beach?
You will leave this beach, mister.
Yeah, there's like,
You know what kind of comedy fans you like if they're instantly making fun of how many sequels were from that never-ending saga, or versus just they dig it but they're afraid to talk about it with certain people. And I'm just like, hey, I saw them all when I was sick one day, and I thought they're the funniest fucking movies ever. But
well, yeah, I mean,
each their own.
you're taking a vacation or the beach or whatever. I want to see beach shenanigans. So that's a movie I would watch at the beach to see more beach shenanigans, because it's 75%. That's what it is.
Oh, totally. And it was improvised, just like Caddyshack and every other John Hughes movie. So it's like, yeah, it's what did you
Yeah.
expect?
So
It may not be high art. It may not be. Obviously, it's going to be dumb. That's really is the point. So, there's a lot of sour people just acting like, oh, how dare you like that movie? It's like, well, someone thought it was funny.
Yeah, me, and apparently only me.
They made 7 of them, and I laughed at all of them. Even though 7 you could say is pretty weak, but it's still pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've actually started to enjoy Highlander Endgame a bit more, just because I kind of preferred the show, and it part 2 will always be a problematic cheese that you make fun of, and part 3, just so boring. But it's like part 4 is like, okay, so that was kind of a Star Trek attempt to get all the whole franchise full circle, and yes, there's still some annoying shit in there, like annoying music video edits and butchered by the Weinstein Company. But it's like, okay, but if compare that, especially with the rough cut edit with the timestamp, that's a special feature, and it's like, okay, there's still some pretty intriguing stuff in here that's being explored. It's not 100%, but it's hardly, the final nail in the coffin, It definitely beats that other piece of shit movie they made afterwards called The Source. That was bad. That was actually probably one of the first movies I saw Donnie Yen in, actually.
Wow.
That was before Shanghai Nights, Blade 2,
Yeah.
Rogue One. So, yeah.
Up until the rape scene, I really liked Showgirls. I was having a great time. But when that happens, it's like, oh, man.
Verhoeven, what are you doing?
Why did we go here?
It's definitely... I do agree. I kind of disagree with people saying it's a campy movie. It's like, no, it's a deliberate satire. Is it 100%? No Paul Verhoeven movie is ever 100%. Some of it just does better in his native language, Dutch, and subtitled versus... And he's done a lot of great Dutch films. But yeah, I only saw it on VH1 edited down. Everyone's wearing bras version, so I never... I was each time when I was seeing part of it, I'm like, I'm really bored by this movie, and it just feels so tasteless. And it's like, well, but I can see why some people legit like it, and no one should ever have to apologize for a movie. It's like, no. Everyone thought they were doing something good, and
I was 17 when that movie came out, so I made it a point. I said, this movie's no children under 17. I'm 17, motherfucker. Here's my $8. And my buddy and I went and we saw it, and we're like, oh, that was pretty good until the rape scene.
at least you don't walk out like Kyle MacLachlan did.
Oh, poor guy. You told me you were making an art film.
Do you feel like it's a realistic portrait of that industry, or is it a little oversaturated, overdone?
Oh, Kyle, you didn't read the script and see the line, in America, everyone is a gynecologist? You didn't? Because you're in that scene, buddy.
Robert Davi said, you only matter when you come. Jeez. It's so quoted, it was even mocked during a recent Bill Maher episode. That exact line. Yeah, I even like it, hate it. I would hardly say it is like the most worst movie of all time. It's like, no, I think, wasn't Roger Ebert like, I kind of secretly like this?
I can't remember his review. I think he 2-star review was okay. Could have been better.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, it was like,
so.
I wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, after all.
It's my happening, but it didn't freak me out, baby.
Oh, well, in all fairness, that's when he started getting sick and he had someone else filling in for him. It's like, what was that replacement critic? Was that Michael Phillips or something from Chicago who said it was great? I'm like, I have seen a lot of people defending that one recently. I'm like, no. But for me, The Happening's just a great comedy. And I'll defend him night. I never thought especially when I was seeing him get locked out of certain studios, it's like, yeah, I don't think he should be a victim. Everyone seems to think it's just one name that's in charge of it all. It's like there's so many people who are in charge of everything: the visual effects supervisor, the makeup, cinematographer, and it only takes literally one thing to wreck it all. It can be all perfect, and there can be, an actor constantly storming off or not in character. There can be, again, a producer just under, promoting it or cutting out a key scene just because he wants it to be 5 minutes less. It's like there's really no excuse to cut down a movie nowadays if you want, if you want to avoid negative press, if it's not just behind schedule, why don't you just leave the guys alone? I really don't understand, because especially when movies aren't film stock anymore, now they're just digital files that are given, It's like, it doesn't have to be an X amount of time. People will gladly go to a 3-hour movie twice a day if they really like it,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I'll defend Elysium. That's another one I see just get shat on. And it's like, okay, so Chappie didn't make any sense, but I like how that one's part of the whole District 9 universe. And, I saw District 9 in theaters and instantly got an appreciation for independent sci-fi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Chappie was okay. Yeah, that one deserves a second look, I think.
I'll try it. I'll definitely rewatch it one more time, because some movies just, you have to. You're not going to get necessarily a good impression, and all it takes is I'm in a bad mood and I made a mistake of watching a movie and I don't like it. Do I find it organized? Not really, but
no.
I think there's some interference, but that's just it. I'm still interested in seeing what Neil Blomkamp can do next. I mean, this guy, I would like to see him team up with Tim Miller, another visual effects turned filmmaker. Is like, I think they could definitely conjure up their own original world.
Yeah.
Give them an anthology show; they'll knock it out of the park.
To your point, when There's Something About Mary came out, I was working at the theater. I saw it the first showing, first day. I saw it like there was only me and 3 other people in the theater. I said, oh, that was okay. Then a friend of mine saw it in a packed house. He thought it was the funniest movie he'd ever seen. And I was like, really? I don't get that. And then I took my girlfriend to see it at a packed theater, and oh my gosh, that's when I learned the power of seeing it with an audience. Some things like comedies,
especially comedies. Yeah. You can get in on certain jokes that you otherwise wouldn't get. Like, Community does way better if you're watching with your college classmates or family, just watching it by yourself, where you're like, okay, this is haha, but it's not because everyone's paying attention to different details and other stuff, and it's like, I mean, sometimes you find comedy that's deliberate in a non-comedy, and it's like, well, but again, it's all of your moods. Some people are just good at catering to a large scale kind of crowd. That's just because that's what they're expecting, a large crowd. So no fair telling them what not to prepare for. They don't know who's going to show. They just want to do a good job and get most of the bases covered. Going back, did you guys ever see Hardware? There's another kind of indie sci-fi.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and that filmmaker's hot dynamite now, but
Yeah.
at the time,
Unfortunately.
I can't believe that got just destroyed. I'm like, well, yeah, it's kind of weak, and yeah, it's very low budget, but it's got a lot of ideas, and
Oh yeah.
definitely well executed. But I mean, no pun intended. But yeah, I decided to get the Blu-ray since I heard so many people randomly talking about it recently. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I should revisit it.
Yeah, I saw that on VHS as a kid, and then when Netflix first came around, the discs in the mail, I was like, oh, I need to rewatch this.
Nice.
I was blown away.
Dylan McDermott, he makes good practice. Well, speaking of which, since that dude later was on a hit David E. Kelly show, how about I go with, what's your take on From the Hip and Lake Placid, two comedies that Kelly did for cinemas that both kind of had their own cult audience, but it was a slow return. What he was doing on the small screen wasn't really playing on the big screen.
Yeah, I never saw From the Hip, but I saw Lake Placid on cable. I thought it was okay.
Now, From the Hip is even funnier because, I mean, they even reference it on site. That's just how cult of a show they are. I'm like, and it's kind of, you watch it and you're like, oh, I totally understand how this guy became the head writer of LA Law and Boston Legal. Like, yeah, it's just a very nutty and yet very, at times, you can't say they didn't. That movie gets critiqued as no one really knew what to expect from it. It's like, well, that's just it. It's kind of both making fun of the legal thriller, and it's also making fun of why people get into this and don't expect, to represent supposedly terrible people, and lose friends as a result of based on who they defend. But yeah, Placid was kind of another one. Is like, you look at it, you think, okay, so mindless Jurassic, it's by Stan Winston, must be a Jurassic Park cash-in. It's like, well, but it's also kind of much like Mr. Alaska that he did that same year. It's making fun of, people in, small towns, that actually exist, overdoing the accents and having some other colorful characters. And it's got a little bit of things for everybody. I mean, it could definitely make a good double feature with something like Tremors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think most people do like it, but every once in a while I'll see some people are like, oh, I hate that movie. I'm like, really? I mean,
well, from the same summer, I didn't think Deep Blue Sea was all that bad. I kind of liked that movie.
I definitely grew up on that one a lot. I mean, I even like Open Water 2 way better than I heard Open Water because it's kind of a disturbing, dead calm kind of thriller. But yeah, it's like, it kind of just became cool to hate shark movies, and it was just always just like any alien type movie. I'm like, well, yeah, it's taking from that, but could easily make the argument that Alien was Jaws in space, or Jaws was every other Harry Hossin type movie. It's just like, everyone's going to take something from the other. It's just, do you do a good job? Like, I thought The Shallows was really good, and it has a high users or critic score, but I see some users just every once in a while just, oh, that was shit. I'm like, no, it takes a while to get going, but that's some really impressive shark CGI, and I feel every bite.
Yeah. Sharks freak me the hell out, so.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely put them on for my sister all the time.
Speaking of CGI sharks, I know it's really independent, but have you ever seen Bad CGI Sharks, the movie?
I think I have. That's that one with Tony Todd. Is like 2017 or something.
No, it's an independent film, and that's literally what it's about. Is their attempt at making a shark movie. These bad CGI sharks that they make come to life, and they start haphazardly hunting them down throughout the town.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one, but that totally looks like my type of movie.
Yeah, highly recommend. Yeah, the shark glitches out all the time. There's like little XYZ coordinates from After Effects.
Already, the first user review I'm saying is someone's complaining about the effects. I'm like,
that's
you're
the
not in on a joke. If the name doesn't give that away, Jesus. It's kind of like Psycho Goreman. It's like, well, yeah, that's making fun of all his tasteless, gory movies. And it's like, what was the one with Tony Todd that it took a while to come out, and it had the one tattooed guy from Nip Tuck and CSI Miami, the bald Latino guy, Robert Lasardo, who I've been fortunate to actually meet at a convention. Let me see. It also had a hysterical name, and it's just flat out funny. You'll instantly watch and you'll be like, oh, okay, this is what I wish, some of these other tributes have been like, because this is just funny.
Sky Sharks, it looks like.
That's the one, yes. It's just gag after gag. It's a really short movie, and they really do a good job of just making fun of just every other 80s trope. Even just have a random plane attack scene that is just literally to die for. Kerry Tagawa's in it. He's his usual over-the-top hammy self. It's a bunch of mutant sharks used by a Blackwater type op source to basically prevent world downfall. It's just a very deliberately absurd movie, and it's just great. But yeah, all bad CGI sharks. I will watch the shit out of that for sure.
Yeah, I think it's on Tubi. It's like everything else.
Tubi's great.
I bet. I don't know. Sometimes it seems like people want to just shit on an indie comedy. I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll defend a movie that's a Sci-Fi Channel movie, but they did pretty good considering they were, making fun of the genre, let alone Bruce Campbell's career. Alien Apocalypse. That one is just literally making fun of everything, just like Forbidden Planet, 2001, types 50s B-grade sci-fi, and he pretty much does an Army of Darkness, we must fight back against the aliens, they're all wearing caveman type clothes, and everyone just won't give it a chance because they just see how badly animated it is. It's like, yeah, but they made this work in their favor as opposed to just, do what most people did at Sci-Fi Channel. Let's make an intentionally bad movie, and it sucks because it's, it's trying too hard, or it's, it really is bad,
I want a trauma movie. I watch a trauma movie.
Right? Or just enough of this asylum crap where if I want to see a bad movie that's just bad and yet instant comedy, give me a Maverick Home Entertainment movie.
Yeah. Go back and watch something by Ed Wood.
There you go. Yeah. It's like, I want to see, an Ed Wood kind of person who's just full of themselves and is definitely can seem to pull to Tommy Wiseau, or just see someone make a really bad hood movie with bad sound and you just guffaw saying, what was that?
It's two movies I grew up on that I thought were loved, but I didn't find out till later they were hated. The Richard Pryor movie, The Toy, and the Pirate movie, the musical.
Oh, the Pirate movie's great.
I haven't seen them in years, so I don't know that I can accurately defend them. But the first year of our video store, that was two mainstays for me.
Oh, I bet.
I wanted that kid's room so bad.
I mean, it had to have been. I mean, if people have been talking about them for years, they clearly got some kind of audience.
Yep.
Yeah, Richard Pryor, I think a lot of his movies are getting reevaluated, revisited. I mean,
yeah, unfortunately, most of them sucked. He could never get that that stage persona on screen.
Well, and that's just it. You can only do so much.
Nope. I think by then he just needed money.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, there was a movie he made no one ever heard of. It involves him moving to Idaho, which that's where I'm from right now.
I think I saw that one.
It's
but-
called Moving.
I saw that with King
So-
Kong Bundy.
So it's like a standard family comedy style movie, but then it's rated R. All the swearing and stuff going on is like the most
one part they couldn't. That was back when they didn't care too much about ratings, and at the same time, you're like, yeah, who was this for? Because it's a pedestrian plot, and yet
Yeah,
he's cursing, and it's not necessarily funny, and it's like,
yeah, just a confusing movie all around, or his later stuff is just like, ugh. It's kind of hard to watch.
I'll do free Richard Pryor defenses. I'll do that Bingo All Stars movie. Actually, that's 4. Lost Highway, then Critical Condition, and then what's the other one? Harlem Nights. I just resaw it 3 days ago. Not as bad as it made out to be. I made the mistake of, like every other Eddie Murphy movie, I would see part of it on VH1 and like, well, it's not going to be funny because they've taken everything good about it out.
Yeah.
Other than Coming to America, you can't watch an Eddie Murphy movie edited.
Oh no.
Metro doesn't make a difference, but watch all the Beverly
to
Hills
that
Cop.
point, in 5th grade, I saw Coming to America on a plane, and I thought it was terrible because it was edited. And then when I got home and watched it on VHS, like, no, this is the funniest movie ever.
Yeah, I guess I lucked out because I saw it on Spike TV and they keep a lot of the rude
Gotcha.
comments in. It's just
Oh no, this is the 80s. Like, instead of saying "f you," Samuel L. Jackson said "forget you." So
I recall that. Oh yeah, back when it was a deal, ABC Family had the freaking hell no, or something like that. What's the other one? But yeah, Harlem Nights kind of suffered from that. It's like, okay, much like Oscar and Last Action Hero, it's a parody of all those Prohibition era gangster movies, First Black Gangster, and for once it's kind of cool to see Eddie. Not only he does a decent job directing at just keeping everything kind of intense, but at the same time, I mean, he doesn't. It's funny seeing him be kind of a wimpy, kid who grew up, to be a gangster partner in crime with all these other guys who are has-beens who, and they're making all these jokes. The merchandise is messed with. The brothel. What are you doing in the brothel? And Arsenio Hall appears and he's funny, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting seeing him kind of avoid what his usual kind of comedy and then just kind of still make a coherent, competent movie. Well, hell, now then talking Eddie Murphy, I'll defend the sequel to 48 Hours. For me, again, the comedy isn't perfect there, but I get way more. This is a controversial opinion. I get way more out of 48 Hours than I do Beverly Hills Cop, and I love the hell out of the first one, but sequels are like it or hate it, and it's like 48 Hours is like they did pretty good considering it was just a repeat, but they kind of were pretty aware of that, especially with Nick Nolte realizing he's going to have to shoot Eddie to kill the bad guy again, shoot through him. And it was cool. Andrew Divoff did pretty good being James Remar's evil brother. They connected it that way. And the only thing that doesn't work is the whole crooked cop angle. I mean, it's interesting and everything. You just wonder, it convinced the screenplay because the studio tampered it down and cut it down to fit more butts and seats. Is like Brian James had more screen time as the good partner got bad. The Iceman, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
my pops is a big fan of both 48 Hours movies.
Oh, perfect. And again, I made the mistake. I would always see him edited on TV. I'm like, this isn't funny. This is very gruesome. This is supposed to be funny. It was like, yeah, they both had their moments, and yet at the same time, they're also hard-boiled, buddy movies. But they, as far as creating that subgenre, I'll take them any day over a lesser Lethal Weapon. I'll take them. I really like Stephen E. D'Souza's writing on Ricochet and the Die Hard movies, so it's like, these definitely work in that same predicament. And seeing it again last time, I was like, oh man, basically that bars haven't changed in the last 30 years. It's still the same hillbillies and shithead bikers. Nowadays, it's definitely the anti-vaxxers and the Trump wars. It's like, Jesus. What bar can you not go to where someone's not being a dick?
two other sequels from the summer of '90 that I don't know that they're hated, but I think they're very underrated, shall we say. I was a big fan of Robocop 2 and Predator 2.
My
Mhm.
sister's a bigger on Robocop 2. Predator 2, I liked it all right. Thing is I would always often see the twist ending, like the last 10 minutes where it connects it to the alien universe or the opening,
Yep.
gang war thing. And I think like Escape New York, it's just become easy cannon fodder where everyone's like, 97, not even close. I'm like, well, guys, the year it was made in, especially the 90s. The 90s still had some propaganda, drugs are bad, cut down on them. So it was like, yeah, that makes sense that you would have kind of some Blade Runner cops, stopping cartels that are even more extremely violent, defending their turf. And it does a good job of being its own identity. I mean, it's kind of where it had to go. It's just considering that Schwarzenegger didn't want to return and become the Mr. Franchise guy, and at the same time, I mean, gave Danny Glover something fun to do.
I will. Any movie with Bill Paxton is at least watchable for him.
He and Mary Chanchita Alonso really do good at playing against type, and
Yeah.
I mean, considering it still had the same writers, and Hopkins was kind of that go-to action horror guy at the time, so it was like, yeah, it totally makes sense that they gave him this gig. Well, hell, I guess I'll defend the other Predator movies. I know a lot of people like to shit on those, but I didn't have problems watching the last two in theaters at all. Lowbrow and nothing to touch to the original, but I mean, it was like I don't think anyone really knew what to expect. It's like, you guys have seen Predator, right?
I have not seen it yet, sadly.
Oh no, sorry, that's what I mean. Just rhetorical.
Oh, Predator!
Yeah.
Predators. I have not seen that one yet.
No.
I saw the.
Well, no, just in general. Like, it's like, you guys are familiar with the Schwarzenegger movie, right?
Yes.
It seems like
Yes.
it seemed like so many people would just hated that. It's like, okay, well, these were all hated at the time, so
Yeah.
if you don't like it, fine. But I mean, I think this has way more going for it than some of the Alien movies, which definitely divide people. Shit, you mentioned another good one. Yeah. Well, from 1990, Maniac Cop 2, I think, is definitely the best of that lowbrow franchise, and that's another one where just like when we were talking Larry Cohen, everyone has a different take on him, and it's like, well, it's a P picture made with heart. That's all it has to be. And you just strip away the supernatural Terminator stuff, it's basically a Serpico kind of movie.
Yeah, that's the quintessential action horror movie. I actually just did a write-up of that recently too, talking
Perfect.
about in general about 90s action horror movies. That was kind of the showpiece.
It really was. And I mean, in Robocop 2's fairness, I mean, yeah, it's not Verhoeven, but it did a good job of just having a bigger and badder, villain. I think it's just what brought it down was, the evil kid. But I fortunately didn't have that problem, was because I saw it on TV. It was a favorite on WGN and UPN.
Yeah, my buddy and I bought tickets to Back to the Future 3, but went in to see Robocop 2.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
I did used to watch the shit out of Part 3, and Back to the Future, I think it's very relevant. It's just one of those, I've seen it to death, so it just doesn't have any impact on me anymore. It's kind of like a song you listen too many times, like if I listen to anything by Queen or Michael Jackson, it doesn't have an impact on me. It's on every other hour, so I'm like, oversaturation. I guess I had a soft spot for Robocop 3. I'm never going to defend it, but it's like, it was kind of fun just seeing, well, it just was a cut down R-rated movie made.
Yeah, it was basically the cartoon show at that point, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, it works, I guess, as a mindless action movie. It doesn't, and I guess really to blame for it was just Orion Pictures, just pretty much not knowing what it even meant to begin with, just taking it at face value as opposed to actually getting the layers that made everyone respond to it. I actually kind of defend the remake a lot, because like Dread, it was trying to be its own movie and do a tribute, as opposed to kind of like Poltergeist, where you're just like, what's going on? I can't even see anything. What does this have to do with the original movie? And everyone shat on it. I'm like, I don't know. I dig the crooked cop angle, and I oh, they're not going to see any gore. I'm like, well, that's okay. It wasn't going to get a gory rating because they forced them to do PG-13. But
the reality of the film market now.
right, and
Just wait for the unrated DVD. It's almost, or DVD. I'm dating myself even saying that. Wait for the unrated
Right.
streaming.
That was definitely the good case with Chronicles of Riddick. Although I did see the unrated cut and I didn't care for it then, and it's like that was one of those. Is like, okay, well, so you're getting more of a Fifth Element Star Trek universe as opposed to the Star Wars Alien universe that you got in the first one, and it's like it's a pretty good universe considering they're trying to do their own thing, and even if you don't like the main star, it's still a pretty good universe. But that was definitely one of those. Is like it got cut down. It was marketed like Lord of the Rings. It's like, no, it shouldn't be like that movie at all. It should be its own deal. And yeah, unrated, everyone does seem to forget. It's like it became a marketing point.
It was a bigger deal in VHS days, and the MP, and before VHS even, the MPA had all the power. But as soon as you saw PG-13 movies putting out unrated cuts, which I guess would technically be the R-rated cuts.
Right. Or just one extra word or just extra footage,
Yeah.
but it's a marketing chip nonetheless. And I mean, this Robocop, the guy had worked on the Elite Squad, movies, so he was used to covering corruption. And I thought he did an amusing takedown on making fun of places like Fox News and private contractors who police the city, but essentially are just legal murder, And it was like, okay, well, so you had a similar kind of dry satire, and I think that was good. You were way better than whoever was attached to it at the one point, who was just, an attention-getting music video hack. It was like, it wasn't that kind of movie, thank God. And can it touch the original? No, but it was an interesting Cinemaplex experience. We actually got to see inside Robo. Now his heart beats and everything. And
Oh, wow.
It's not like, well, that was ballsy.
Yeah, that was like one of the only interesting parts. Well, that and the fact that they could change the programming in his mind. I thought that was an interesting addition that they could ramp that up to lose a total automaton, which they didn't really touch on in the original one. So that. But other than that, I was mostly bored throughout that production.
Oh, good. Well, I think we pretty much have wrapped it up. But I think we pretty much just hit down on how a lot of these movies are either reasonable, but everyone has an offensive response to it, or they're just dead on arrival because they got the reboot, remake attached to it. And it's like, well, if it takes you 5 viewings to kind of hate a movie, then that says a lot. You liked it the first 5 times. What made you change?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like every movie, there's flaws. It's just, I don't know, certain people want to harp on these type of movies with their flaws versus others. So
I know. I have to tell certain people, just shut up. You are ruining this movie for me. It's like, I'm seeing some people who want to dare to make Speed like be unwatchable now. Oh, you can never do a bus jump like that. I'm like, don't take your science and shove it. Don't ruin this disaster movie for me. This is just, at least you are invested. At least you can suspend reality versus some of these other ones where you don't know what to expect, or it's spectacularly bad, like San Andreas, where you're like, give me a break. Oh, and I'm sure The Rock kind of has that with a lot of his movies, where it's just like, okay, it's going to be a wacky slugfest. He's basically PG-13 Dolph Lundgren, and he's doing anything and everything.
Yeah. I'm interested to take my kids to see the Jungle Cruise, though. Maybe we'll go see that at the drive-in.
Kids will like it. It's a little throwback, to Indiana Jones in spots.
Yeah,
it's the typical goofiness that you might expect, but it really is. It does take you back. So yeah, if you can turn off your film critic perception a little bit.
Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't.
Yeah. I think that's
I really
what you
dug
can.
I really dug the new Tomb Raider because that was kind of a throwback to Indiana Jones stuff, and there were other people who were like, I want this to be gruesome like the games. I'm like, well, only the recent games have been gruesome, so what planet are you on?
If you want a gruesome Tomb Raider, it's gonna have to go to Netflix or something because they'll never make their money back theatrically.
Right.
No, you're cutting out more than half your audience, which is, under 17-year-old dudes. No?
I mean, how gruesome does that have to be? Just one impalement or what? It's like most of the gruesome happens when you do play the game wrong. So what could you possibly? It's like, yeah.
It's gruesome. You did it wrong.
Where can we find you on the web? So, Ultimate Action Movie Club. What you're promoting, Ken? What are you reviewing next?
Well, not really much going on. You can follow my Instagram, Yoda3278. I hope to be returning on the Jacked Up Movie Podcast at some point in time.
Thank you. Anytime. And Mike, you always have some pretty catchy Instagram posts on just total retro throwback,
Yeah, I'd cover pretty much everything. I'm also on Twitter, at Buzz Movies. I'm actually rendering out the action horror movie video, which kind of complements the article I wrote right now. So that'll be going up either today or tomorrow. So I drink a little bit and I talk about Maniac Cop 2 and Split Second and From Dusk Till Dawn, all those classics.
Yeah.
So look out for that.
I love the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I'll definitely get you for some of these other cult franchises. If there's more than two of them, and I might get you for something like Wedlock, or what's the other one? Fortress.
All right, come back to me when you've seen Full Eclipse starring Mario Van Peebles.
Oh, that's a good one. Very Wolverine influenced.
I actually saw that earlier this year, finally, when I was doing a list for Van. I was like, yeah. I don't know if Boyne on Action Elite has posted it yet. I don't think he has. I'm like, well, definitely one of Van Peebles' best movies.
Yeah, Wolfman Street Justice is all you need to know.
Right? Kind of had a Lost Boys feel to it, even though it was werewolves and not vampires. Oh, back when you could do anything and everything.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you all for being on here. This was a fun, just quick chat.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome back anytime. Just let me know if there's just somebody who's like, let's talk about it. I'm like, yeah, I'll get it, and I'll get it edited, and it'll air within 3 months.
I've got your list that you sent me, Cameron. I'll be dropping this particular topic interested me, so I'll be dropping in from time to time. I appreciate you having me.
Anytime. And we got to stay healthy. We got to talk about what we like and everything. Got to have positive conversations. You're seeing so much increase in people doing like, hey, join my mental health podcast. It's like, well, I don't really want to talk about what's wrong with me. I want to talk about what I like and heal myself that way.
This is mental health. I try to avoid any sort of politics or stuff on my pages and whatnot, just because it's not worth. There's a lot more going on than just what's going on right now. So
I even try to avoid like very heated movie topics because it just seems like I avoided talking about Jeepers Creepers for a while, and then I said, okay, well, if we're going to talk about that, let's talk about it with Final Destination, another movie that was kind of a like it or hate it giant franchise. So it's like that way I can balance it out and not get a bunch of people saying, oh, you talked about a movie made by a pedophile. I was like, okay, well, I don't want those comments. And at the same time, like you say, you can't avoid it all the time, but like you say, if you can at least talk about this is a very detailed movie without talking about the political part of it, yeah, it's like. But then there was others where it's like, okay, well, we're talking about 24, we're talking about The West Wing, so we're going to get a little political, but not to the point where it's like, okay, now we're really dividing our audience. It's like, well, that was the beauty of these. They were able to have a huge audience despite politics. So it's like, yeah, if we're going to talk about anything, let's make sure we're prepared to even talk about it. And like you say, like avoid a deep discussion that really left a bad taste in everyone's mouth because it just made you unhappy and it just reminded you how toxic today's world can be. So it's like, yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Best of luck all the time, gents. On
Thank you. See you
All
soon.
right.
on.
Thank you very much.
Nice
Yep.
to meet you, Mike. Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you, Ken. Yep.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time.
Ah,
Tangents galore.
yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Ah, yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ.
Ah,
We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair to say
ah, ah,
all
yeah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
Ah, I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll go end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am in the most sincerest of senses disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be
did
a
you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zemenov. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zemenov, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zemenov, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zemenov.
Hi everybody, it's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs, There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up